Alex is a Public Utilities Regulatory Analyst 5, and he also chairs CPUC Disability Advisory Committee. Alex is a person with lifelong, visible, and invisible disabilities, and he currently serves as at-large board member of the Association of California State Employees with Disabilities, ACSED. Previously, he held the role of DAC Vice Chair and Secretary at the CPUC. Before joining the CPUC, Alex worked at the California Energy Commission, CEC, as a mechanical engineer, associate energy specialist, and graduate student intern. Before joining state service, Alex was a regional director and engineer in a private sector working in the area of photovoltaic research, energy production, sales. Earlier in his career, he worked as a legal clerk in various capacities. Alex earned a Master's of Science in Civil and Environmental Engineering, a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering with a minor in Technology Management, both from University of California, Davis, as well as associate degree from Woodland Community College, American River College, a very accomplished man. Without further ado, please welcome Alex to SDAC. Alex, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Pineda, and I am the current chair of the California Public Utilities Commission's Disability Advisory Committee. First, before I continue, I want to make sure, is my voice coming through clearly? Sometimes I have audio issues.
You have no audio issues today, Alex. It's a good day for you.
So far. Thank you, Bobby. And also, continuing on, to describe myself, I am a mix of Mexican and Honduran with black hair and brown eyes. I'm wearing dark frame glasses, a light purple button-up dress shirt with a gray tie, and a darker gray coat. I am also, as Bobby mentioned, a person with both visible and invisible disabilities, some of which I was born with and others unexpectedly and without warning from a distracted driver impact while commuting home after work. So even though I talk a bit fast, I don't talk nearly as fast as I used to. And sometimes I hit a word speaking wall and have to find words that I'm wanting to use and take pauses as needed. Now, before continuing, I'd also like to extend a thank you again to Bobby for inviting me to speak here today. And also, I'd like to thank you, everyone, for being here today and tuning in to important disability issues-related topics. I am both honored and thankful for the opportunity to be here today. As far as the topics I'd like to discuss today, I'd like to share some aspects of what my agency's DAC does, our approach to the mandates, and enhancing the work culture of employees with disabilities. The topics I'll be speaking about are our DAC meetings, the DAC mandates, compliance, advisement and related activities, our DAC's ideal moments, and I'll elaborate more on that later, and also our culture of being open to hearing others' perspectives. Within these topics is a common theme, which is a theme of learning and understanding, which facilitates deeper discussions and improves our mandated purpose of advisement. First, we'll go over the topic of meetings. My DAC typically has monthly meetings. Also, in about the past year, we have opened our DAC meetings once per quarter to everyone in our agency to attend. We have seen many staff, plus some management, commissioners, and commissioner advisors in attendance. And we appreciate all that attend when they can make it to our meetings. We make efforts to have our meetings tone be welcoming and belonging of employees with disabilities and employees without disabilities, while also striving to provide educational value for everyone that can attend. Now, moving on to the mandate explanation. So our DAC advises based on the DAC mandates, which I have also discussed with others to verify such understanding and how the mandates apply. While it's likely you've heard the mandate many times before, in case there's anyone that has not or is unclear of aspects of it, I will go over some parts of it and highlight key points. From the California Government Code, Section 19795B1, it states in part, each state agency shall establish a separate committee of employees to advise the head of the agency on issues of concern to employees with disabilities. The first important point there is the word separate committee, as in an independent committee of employees. It is by mandate an independent committee run by its members. But to do what? So the mandate says the DAC is to advise the head of the agency. The working title of the head of the agency can vary from agency to agency. As an example, the head of the agency could be a director or some other title. In my DAC's case, our committee recently took a final look at the mandates language of section 19795A and also B1. And through analysis, meetings, and an external to DAC draft charter, which was not adopted, though did have a distinction between head of agency and executive director, we determined the head of the agency to be the president of our agency. Such processes of analysis and determination is summarized in our recently updated DAC bylaws, which were voted on and approved by the DAC members. The next topic I wanted to discuss is compliance. There are parts of compliance related to the DAC mandates. There is how it is applicable to the DAC and also how it is applicable to the agency. First, about section 19795B1 is applicable to the DACs. The mandate states that the DAC is to advise the head of the agency, as mentioned a moment ago. Advisement on this topic of disabilities is very important and useful, and it must be so if there's a mandate requiring it. Keep in mind that this mandate, as applicable to the DAC, is advisement only, and advisement is provided for others to use or not use, and as such, the result of such advisement and its implementation are not a measurement of compliance, nor should be a measurement of a DAC's performance. Also, keep in mind that the same mandate also states that the separate committee, which is the DAC, must advise the head of the agency. Now, moving on to agency compliance. Generally speaking, 19795B1 and 2 require an agency to have established a separate committee of employees, aka an independent DAC. It also requires the head of the agency to be advised by the DAC. Further, the mandate requires the agency to ensure that 2/3 of the members of the committee are persons with disabilities, or to retain documentation to show this meeting, or to show that meeting this requirement was not possible. So make sure you know and understand the distinctions of the mandates and compliance as applicable to the DAC and as applicable to the agency. The next topic I'd like to discuss is advisement and related activities. We advise on issues of employees with disabilities as applicable to the DAC mandates, which can include state and agency policies and procedures. Some recent recommendations include that we have done is we've advised on improving and increasing trainings that are applicable to persons with disabilities and how to hire, train, and also, very importantly, retain employees with disabilities. Also, we've advised on increasing the number of LEAP eligible classifications, including the Public Utilities Regulatory Analyst, also known as PURA, series of classifications, and other classifications. While we were told the agency was not the appropriate channel to make this happen, we're happy to report that the agency very recently did make this PURA 1 through 5 series a LEAP eligible classification. We also make efforts to be tuned in to advise on and otherwise participate in disability-related hiring and promotional opportunity processes and events that the CPUC takes part in as applicable to the DAC mandates. Now, the next topic is the ideal moments. While I typically open DAC meetings with an ideal moment, IDEAL, which I'll explain what it stands for in a moment, I purposely did not open with it in this discussion because I would like to give some context, an explanation of my work background to give context on this topic, and then bring the conversation back to what this specific item is. When I was first hired at the CPUC, I worked in a division that sunset at the end of 2019. This division was called the Office of the Safety Advocate. And generally speaking, the work focused on topics of safety management systems and safety culture. So in the arena of safety, meetings often have an item called a safety moment toward the beginning of their discussion. A safety moment is a brief discussion or reminder during meetings to raise awareness about safety practices and encourage safe behaviors. Having a safety moment helps to enhance safety culture. I wanted to try and implement something similar in nature, as I like to educate and have a passion for helping making a change happen for persons and employees with disabilities. Now, let's get into what an ideal moment is. And so when I became chair in July of 2024, the DAC began providing the DAC's ideal moments at our monthly meetings, which focused on inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, and learning to enhance our disability culture and understanding of disability-related topics as applicable to the DAC's mandate of 19795B1. In practice, an introduction to the topic is provided, followed by a couple or so talking points within each of the individual ideal headings, and then a conclusion wraps it up. The first ideal moment was provided on the topic of Disability Pride Month in July 2024, and then in the recent December 2024 DAC meeting, we provided an ideal moment on the topic of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities and how it could be impactful for employees with disabilities. The next topic is being open to hearing perspectives. So our DAC's culture has moved the needle over the years towards being comfortable and free to discuss our own perspectives on topics, even if it disagrees in any way with others' perspectives. We invite members and attendees to openly speak in our meetings and encourage feedback. We are passionate about what the DAC is mandated to do, and this helps us learn and grow, and it helps improve our advisory capabilities. That all being said, in the interest of having open dialogues, sharing knowledge and ideas, and furthering a culture of belonging, sensitivity, and empathy toward disability-related issues and concerns, I encourage us all to speak, even if it is not in agreement. Disagreement can spark further ideas and understanding, plus additional conversations and other benefits. So in conclusion, I hope these talking points were both educational and helpful, and I greatly appreciate you taking time to be here today. And again, extend my thanks to each of you. That wraps up. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, Alex. Again, it's a very good perspective from a DAC chair. If you have questions for Alex, please unmute, ask your question, or raise your hand. While you're thinking about your questions, I'm going to ask Alex one of the questions that's generally come to my desk. That is, what are the challenges of being a DAC chair in your particular setting?
A challenge of being a DAC chair? Sorry, I was reading through the chat, trying to make sure that I didn't miss anybody's questions. A challenge of being a DAC chair. Much of it is in trying to ensure that the DAC stays in line with the mandate, and also ensuring that when there's restructuring of the organization and there's people shifted into various capacities which can impact persons with disabilities, whether it be a reasonable accommodation coordinator or otherwise, that they do not try to take control of a DAC and to ensure that they understand that there is an actual DAC mandate, and to explain what the mandate is and explain how the DAC should function. Often, from my experience, and I understand that organizations want to operate as efficiently and effectively as possible and control the different mechanisms of an agency. However, the DAC mandate gives the DACs the ability to function with autonomy. At least my perspective and my understanding of the DAC mandate. A way that I describe it visually for people that are familiar with org charts is there's I'm not saying it's exactly the same. However, there's the state of California org chart, which shows the governor and the different agencies, and you can draw a line between the governor and various agencies. However, there's a select set of agencies that do not have a line drawn to them. So similarly speaking, at least from my perspective and the DAC's perspective of where I'm employed, is that if we take it into a context of an org chart, there would be the president and lines drawn to the different people that report to them. However, there's the DAC, which floats without a line drawn to it. We're not overseen by any entity. We advise, but we don't report to or otherwise.
So basically, what you're saying is DAC is an independent body within the organization that you are under, and your function simply as an advisory capacity to advise the chief head of that entity. That's essentially it, right?
Correct.
You're not subordinate to anyone other than the chief as an advisor to the chief of the entity.
Correct.
Okay. And anybody have any questions about this issue, please unmute, ask your questions, or clarify any points that Alex just made. And again, we're happy to take questions. Oh, Carrie has her hand up. Carrie, please go ahead, unmute, ask your question.
It's me again. Alex, thank you so much for reiterating the independence of the DAC. I appreciate that. And it sounds like what you're saying is that DAC should be a safe space for everyone to share. And I've been in a couple different DACs, and I know that people don't always feel that way. And I wanted to go back to what you said, because I'm not sure I understand, but I think I do. When you talked about when restructuring occurs or there's a new RA coordinator, can you go into that a little bit more? Are you kind of suggesting that sometimes that those individuals kind of come and take over? Or can you speak to that a little bit? Because I've seen that at different organizations that I've worked at in the past.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm not directing this comment to anybody in particular as far as our agency. I understand that there's clarifications that need to be made, especially if somebody's being brought on board and they're new to the state process, or perhaps they're new to working with DACs, at least in the state or public sector. They may come in with the belief that the way they've done it in the past is the way that it functions on the state level. However, that's incorrect. And so I like to pull up the DAC mandate, go through the language similarly to how I did in this conversation, and point out the key points of the language, and then explain how the DAC functions. While they're not always happy to hear that, I just lay out what the mandate says and what it means. I'm not there to butt heads with anybody. I'm strictly there to point out facts and abide by the mandate. So I don't know if that answered your question. Sorry if it did not, but if it did, please let me know.
No, it did. And I like the way you phrased that. You're not there to butt heads with anyone, just to state the facts. Great perspective. Thank you.
Great question, Carrie, as always. Glad that you're participating actively and helping us understand the process better. Thank you. So general question for everyone. Does your DAC chair speak directly with the director, or is communication to the director relayed through the EEO liaison?
Okay, well, I'll answer that one out loud, but I see that question is directed to, I think, to all the DAC chairs that are here. Our DAC, until very recently, we were not reporting to, but we interpreted the language incorrectly as being the executive director. And so we made modification, as well as some others, to our DAC bylaws. And it now clearly states from our own research that the head of the agency is the president of our agency, which our agency has a multi-person commission board and a president and also an executive director. So the president is the head of the agency in our case. We have met with the president in the past. We've also met with the various commissioners and the executive director. So we do have direct communications with them. It's not super frequent. However, we do.
And I think Candace from EMSA and Lisa Kilgore have said in chat that they speak directly to their directors. Meredith said something about EO liaison. ABC EEO officer informs the director. When I was a DAC chair for CDPH, I insisted on speaking to the director because that's what Government Code 19795B talks about. So that's, again, it's always better if you have the leadership's attention on matters that affect persons with disabilities spoken to in a direct fashion. But anyway, so each entity is different and you do what's right for you and, within certain limitations and advocate for a person with disabilities any way you can. Any other questions?
And then also just to note, if anybody has any questions, they can, I don't know, I can offer you up, Bobby, to just forward me somebody's contact info. If that's too much, let me know. You're laughing. You're welcome, Bobby.
So nice of you to offer that. I really appreciate it.
I do what I can to give you more emails.
Yeah, I know. It's season to be jolly, right?
My gift to you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Well, Alex, if there aren't any other questions from anyone, I say thank you to Alex. I really appreciate your presentation. This is why we have this. We always invite DAC chairs and DAC members to participate in this. And moving forward, as Eli mentioned, we're going to be doing more of this in years to come. On a final note, thank you everyone for your dedication to advancing workplace inclusion throughout 2024. Your advocacy and commitment to disability rights have created meaningful changes across our state entities. As we enter 2025, let's continue building on this foundation to create even more inclusive and accessible workplace where all employees can thrive. Your work inspires positive change and impacts countless lives. Wishing you all an impactful new year ahead. Thank you and goodbye.